Could there be a purpose in our loneliness epidemic? Could there be something to be learned from the issues that we are currently facing in our modern day world? What if there is a thin line between loneliness and the power of solitude? But once again, there is a very thin line between falling into a downward spiral in a massive void, in an abyss that exists within us. Or can we learn to evolve through this challenge, this war that we are fighting in our mind and spirit? So let's talk about it, because I think men and women, they both experience loneliness, but both in their own way. I think the good women that exist are now looking up, who are highly educated, have good careers, are independent, financially independent, have their own house and all of these things, but they cannot find an equal match. A strong, independent man who has a good career, who has all his shit together, who is not only financially stable, independent, and could provide and take care of his woman, but also who is emotional, mature, spiritual, and all of that, who has done his own healing process, so he won't go into a relationship causing dramas and such. Now, right now I think there are a lot of course, women who now say, well, I cannot find a match anymore because a lot of modern men, they are not men anymore. They are not doing manly things. And as I'm living here in the southwest of the Netherlands, I think we are not really so much fully aware of the whole situation of the world, because we live in a smaller region. But the Netherlands ain't longer the Netherlands because it's European Union, and European Union is right now a colony from United States. So everything that we see is happening in the United States, the issues, crises and all of that, are slowly of course coming here to the West as well. And what we are seeing, because men and women experience loneliness in their own way, because good-looking women, they only have to put up a picture on a social media profile and get hundreds of likes, attentions, and weak simping men wasting their time and energy simping over her beauty and putting up her onto a pedestal. But yet these type of women, they of course cannot really establish any kind of meaningful, authentic connections, because the only thing they can get is princess treatments, and that's about it. But of course they cannot really experience a true authentic connection. Now the whole thing for men and loneliness, that is a chapter we can speak hours and hours and hours on, because it seems is that the world we live in right now is not really longer for men anymore. Perhaps this could be coming in from our left liberal political agendas and such that happens and evolved out of feminism and woke and all of that, that masculine men, they should be blackmailed, they should be gaslighted, aggression is not allowed, masculinity is not allowed, and now these men are trying to adapt and become more feminine, and then they get repelled by a feminine woman who say like, well, these men are not longer men anymore. But that's really what they try to do in order to adapt and play as a chameleon. But the real men, they start to slowly fall into a downward spiral. Those who have a job, they see that the majority of the jobs, they absolutely don't completely give a damn about you. They just see you as cog in this wheel, or a wheel in this whole machine. You're just there for profit, for the bottom line of profit. And sure, you can have an income from that, but basically you cannot do anything with this income. It's almost impossible to buy a house, start a family, and all of that. So from a single income alone, you cannot take care of a woman equal and such. So that is of course not good for the woman to be feminine, but for men, they don't feel masculine enough because they can't provide, protect and give support to the woman. So that is kind of like hurting the self-esteem and self-worth of the modern day man. And because everything feels so pointless, like in the United States you can apply to hundreds of jobs and not getting anything back at all, and if you go and get invited towards an application, you probably get exposed towards the whole agendas of diversities, which probably already started in college. So a lot of white males, they already get exposed to the whole agendas of diversity. And that is of course going on in the larger corporations as well, because they want to gain points for the political and agendas happening in from the governments, and maybe they can support financial support for that as well. Now, if you go further into this whole political thing, you think about why do we need diversity? Because blue fish go and swim with blue fish as an unified tribe. And what it seems is like this all through this divide and conquer and diversities. I mean, a red fish does not swim with a blue fish, and then they get diversed. There will be more isolation. There will be conquer and divide. Now, the reason I bring this up, because this is also what I experienced when I was living in England as well. So coming back, like how did we ended up in here? I mean, if you think about the history of mankind, I mean, we evolved from the hunter-gatherers. We evolved from the hunter-gatherers, and we were living in small tribes together, and around the world there were like different kind of tribes, and sometimes the different kind of tribes were at war with each other and they fight about it. But the majority, they were living in small tribes, hunter-gatherers, warriors, and everybody knew their place in this tribe. They know exactly what was expected from them. Now, we evolved from hunter-gatherers into a farmer-based society, and within the farm we had a farmer who grow the crops and the grains and the wheat, and from that the local villages started to grow. We grow from villages into towns, into cities, and then we moved of course into the industrial revolution. And then from the last several decades we went into the digital revolution, which we are seeing right now. Everything is basically on our fingertips. The overly connected world, but yet we are, and we have never been, so highly disconnected from ourselves, our own nature, our spirituality, from each other, the world around us. So what we are seeing is lots of divide and conquer, where we are indeed basically being seen like those who are having a job, having a salary, is that it's all meaningless, pointless. Like only if you were a baby boomer working back in the day, you had a chance. Like if you work hard, you could excel and proceed and get access to a house, land, family, and all of these traditional things, but that does not longer exist anymore in this world. Like, it is already difficult enough to basically to provide for yourself with only one paycheck. Now you could say, well, you know, time to go and start your own business, work online, start a YouTube channel and do all these things, which is of course the alternative, and it could be the better way forward, where we start our own ventures out in the world. But even working from home, alone, in isolation, where nobody is really expecting you to show up in front of your computer at 9 AM exactly to start hustling, grinding, creating content and do your marketing, it's very easy to just sleep in, wake up whenever you want. And then you look to your laptop and you feel like, man, I don't really feel like doing anything at all. It also feels really highly isolated and lonely. And maybe I can throw up some videos on my channel. I get some views, maybe I don't, maybe I will, 1 out of 10. But really, how does that make us feel? Does it really make us feel more connected and unified? Or we think, well, I see just a bunch of numbers on a computer screen. So if this is really meaningful at all, that's the question. So the majority of lots of men right now are simply just pulling away from everything, pulling away from the work world of working in a corporate environment. Don't really see that it's any meaningful or purposeful to start your own business, because even when you are making good money, once you start making money, the government is coming after you and are taking everything away, the majority of it. So you can be self-employed, but only to, let's say, 30,000 a year, and then after 30,000 a year, for example, you pay much more taxes. So if it's really like meaningful at all to start your own business, and even start your own business is of course also a lonely journey as well in the beginning, before you get recognized and seen and respected, and people start to see your value and start to appreciate for that, and the community grows around your business. Before that, you can be hustling and grinding for months and years before that actually really starts to happening. And then having these options and the freedom of choice and access, does that also lead to, let's say, spiritual fulfillment? That is of course something that needs to go hand in hand with that as well. If you don't have that in place, then the material things and building up your ego and status and wealth and external reputation, does that really seem to matter? Does that go hand in hand? So there are lots of things that are now causing this loneliness epidemic. I mean, once again, we can create hours and hours of content about that. But is this now also an invitation to truly evolve through this modern day world we are currently living in? Where lots of us are either pulling away from everything and do not want to engage with anything at all, just go on this downward spiral, distract yourself with lots of addictions, video games, porn, movies, Netflix, you name it. Just waste your life force energy into that. Or could this be also an invitation where we must face our own inner shadows and voids that exist within us, to become comfortable with the uncomfortable of loneliness in the first place, of being able to find a level of contentment within ourselves. So we gain a level of mastery over ourselves, over our mind, body and spirits. So we become like a complete, sovereign, independent, spiritual being having a temporary human experience. And then eventually we can go out and venture out in the world, where once again we reconnect with our primary purpose of self-mastery. That is really what we came here to do. And then we can also connect with our secondary purpose in the world of creating some sort of a service or a product or a contribution towards the world, of wanting to serve something, of building our own little collective or tribes and communities, something that is really missing, where we can have these face-to-face interactions. Even if we are working online, there's technology of course where we can do that, where we can come together and actually really have true meaningful connections and relationships, where we can come together and unite in a world that is doing everything it can within his power and strength to conquer and divide through diversity and all of these political agendas that we are seeing right now, that is doing everything it can to suppress the masculine energy, because the masculine energy is going after his freedom, and that is not what the elite of the world of course wants. They want to take away our freedom, take away our power to create and manifest and build and become sovereign over our body, mind and spirit. So that's really the true challenge. It is a very thin line of falling into this void, this abyss and this downward spiral when we feel these feelings and emotions of loneliness and isolation and boredom and not enough stimulation. But once again, there's this thin choice as well, like are we going into a soulless, meaningless corporate job where they absolutely don't give a damn about your well-being, where you're just like a cog in this machine, where you're being exploited, where they can pay you a tiny little membership over your availability, and they want to extract as much out of you as humanly possible of what is just being legal, and you're left with basically nothing, where you can barely survive. Or are we drawing the line and facing these shadows that exist within us as we are navigating throughout these emotional dark ages that we are seeing right now? Become a master over that's what we are facing, because once we gain mastery over oneself and start participating, even if we are facing times of lack of stimulation, lack of engagement, lack of connections, lack of whatever, that's what we are perceiving within us, is that is what we must go through in order to build and create our own legacy with the tools that is currently available to us right now. So that's the question, that's the discussion. Let me know your thoughts, what it is that you are going through, even if you're a man or a woman. What kind of loneliness or isolation do you currently experience? As a woman, do you see that a lot of men simply cannot keep up with this system that is kind of like doing everything it can within its power to conquer and divide, and that we as men are now also being invited to connect with the warrior spirit that also exists within us, to fight that shadow, this blanket of a shadow that is covered around the world, that is also causing these emotional triggers within us, and that is also giving us an invite where we must become comfortable in the solitude to truly reclaim our powers. Let me know your thoughts, simply drop a comment below, and I see you in one of my next videos. Take care for now.